You're watching a Highwire Media podcast. Welcome to the debut episode of Dead Reckoning, a deep dive into the truth behind some of the most infamous conspiracy theories, wild unsolved mysteries, and more. Each week we dive into a case and take a look at what really happened and what the most logical explanation is. We still welcome your wild theories, just leave those in the comments section. Okay, enough of that. Let's get on with it, shall we? I'm already stretching the intro too long, so let's dive right in. Almost everyone has at least one story, or has heard one, about a plane vanishing mid-flight. I mean, who hasn't? In fact, are you familiar with the show, what's it called? Manifest, I think, the one where a flight disappears and then reappears years later and the passengers, no time has passed? Now that idea was brilliant. The execution, subpar. No offense to the creators, but it had that vibe of a 90s sci-fi channel show. You know the ones, kind of low budget, weird CGI, and you just knew they didn't have much cash to throw around. And sure, everything from the 90s kind of looks dated now, but even back then, some shows were particularly rough. And this one, Manifest, felt like a modern day equivalent. I don't know which network aired it or what their budget was. I do know it landed on, I think, Netflix or Hulu, one of those two. But it definitely didn't have the high production polish. I wish someone like the team behind Breaking Bad had made it. Give it a big budget because the premise deserved it. Anyways, we're a few lines in, already a couple minutes deep. Let's get to the actual story, shall we? Excuse me. It's not exactly shocking that stories of vanished aircraft tend to get tied up with wild tales, time warps, alien kidnappings, secret government ops. You know, the usual internet rabbit holes and late night Reddit conspiracies. But when you strip all that away, the truth is usually pretty boring. Mundane, even. But when someone says, that plane just disappeared, it's rarely the case. The truth is, planes don't just vanish. They need fuel. They can't fly forever. They either land somewhere where people tend to notice a giant metal bird landing, or they crash. And if it crashes into the sea, say like in Lost, hate to break it to you, but they don't all survive. They're not living on a magical island with polar bears and smoke monsters. They're just dead, because a crash in the ocean is catastrophic. Still, just because there's no evidence of otherworldly involvement doesn't mean the story itself isn't fascinating. In today's case, it's one of the most strangest and most compelling aircraft disappearance stories out there. Flight 19. As you'd expect, today's story comes with a full package of conspiracy theories. Excuse me. So yes, well, we'll definitely explore some of the more outrageous theories today. We're also going to walk through the most likely scenario, the one that probably actually happened. And if I had to guess right now, I'd say the plane crashed. Grab your drink of choice. I'm sticking with Canada Dry. All right, get comfy and let's dig into what really happened to Flight 19. Let's start with the man in charge, Lieutenant Charles C. Taylor. Anyways, Taylor, let's call him Charles for now, was no amateur. The guy had over 2,500 hours of flight time. 600 of those were spent flying the TBM Avenger torpedo bomber, the same aircraft used for Flight 19. Add to that 2 years of experience as a flight instructor, and you got someone who, on paper, should have been more than capable of leading a simple training exercise. And when I say simple, I mean simple. The operation was nicknamed Navigation Problem Number 1, because it was basically the first thing they taught new pilots. This wasn't some top secret stealth mission, it was basic. The exercise took place on December 5th, 1945, not long after World War II ended. According to records from the National Archives in Fort Worth, the mission went something like this. Fly east from Fort Lauderdale, do a practice bombing run at Hen and Chicken Shoals, just north of the Bahamas. Continue east, then turn north over Grand Bahama Island. Finally, turn southwest and return to base. The entire route, roughly 316 miles. Total flight, about 2 hours and 40 minutes. Sounds straightforward, right? At 2:10 p.m., Taylor and 13 other Navy personnel took off in 5 Avenger bombers. The first part of the mission went off without any issues. But by 3:40 p.m., things started to unravel. Radio transcripts from the mission reveal that one of the pilots radioed another to ask for a compass heading. The response? I don't know where we are. We got lost after that last turn. Now, if this is ringing any bells, you might be thinking that infamous whitewater transmission. Is this that case? I vaguely remember something about pilots getting disoriented and mentioning strange ocean conditions. Well, if that's what you're thinking, yes, this might be the one, and it only gets weirder. Around 3:43 p.m., Taylor himself radioed to a base operator, saying, quote, "Both my compasses are out, and I'm trying to find Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I'm over land, but it's broken. I'm sure I'm in the Keys, but I don't know how far down, and I don't know how to get back." Here's the kicker. Taylor wasn't over the Florida Keys at all. He was actually northeast of Fort Lauderdale, not southwest like he believed. Completely disoriented. If he had simply followed standard procedure, something any pilot would have been trained to do, he could have recovered. The Atlantic has one reliable feature: the sun. When in doubt, fly towards the setting sun, which means west. That would have brought him to land. And while the flying part is tough, the navigation part, the sun sets in the west. That's flying 101. You don't need a working compass to figure that out. So why didn't Taylor figure it out? I'm starting to wonder if something physiological was going on, maybe oxygen deprivation. Altitude can mess with your brain. There's this video, maybe from Veritasium, where a guy goes into a hypoxia chamber. They remove his oxygen at simulated high altitudes. At first, he's fine. Then they ask him to complete a simpler toddler-level puzzle. He just can't. He's giggling, looking totally confused, and they're like, "Put your mask back on." He's like, "Mask? What mask?" Oxygen matters a lot. And when you're flying at altitude and things go wrong, it can get real fuzzy real fast. But back to Taylor. Believing he was over the Gulf of Mexico, he decided to fly northeast to reach Florida, which in reality only took him further out to sea. At this point, some of the other pilots were starting to question his judgment. One even said over the radio, quote, "Damn it, if we'd just fly west, we'd get home." Eventually, it seems Taylor was persuaded to turn west. But by 6 p.m., he changed his mind again and ordered the group to fly east. Again, totally the wrong direction. It's believed that at least one of the pilots had had enough. He split off from the formation, tried to make it home solo. Honestly, can't blame him. Charlie's lost his mind, he probably thought. "I'm done with this, I'm heading back." Sadly, even that rogue pilot didn't make it back. His plane disappeared too. Unfortunately, even that pilot who decided to break away from Taylor's misguided navigation didn't fare any better. This is the harsh reality of getting lost in the sky, especially over the ocean. Planes don't have infinite fuel. Once you're out, your options are severely limited. And that's the situation Flight 19 found itself in. As the formation drifted farther and farther out to sea, their radio transmissions became fainter and more erratic. Eventually, Taylor gave the order to prepare for a crash landing. A few moments later, radio contact ended. As you'd expect, the Navy didn't just write this off and move on. An immediate, massive search operation was launched to locate Flight 19. I mean, of course they did. It's not like they shrugged and went, "Oh well, Taylor's probably gone. Let's just carry on." No, this is the military. The "no man left behind" isn't just a slogan. It's a real protocol. Search planes, ships, the works, they were all deployed. One part of that search effort involved launching two massive PBM Mariner flying boats. These were large rescue aircraft designed to patrol vast stretches of ocean. But here's where things get even more eerie. Only 20 minutes after one of those Mariners took off, it also vanished without a trace. 13 crew members were on board. Yes, another aircraft gone. Excuse me. In the 5 days that followed, the Navy dispatched over 300 aircraft and ships to comb through more than 300,000 square miles of ocean. That is almost the size of Texas, and yet nothing. No wreckage, no bodies, no distress beacons. Flight 19, along with that Mariner, simply disappeared. So what happened? Let's stick with the facts before diving into the wild theories. Up until now, everything I've talked about comes directly from Navy reports and official transcripts. So let's keep that going for a moment. Let's start with the Mariner, the rescue plane that exploded and vanished. According to the Navy, the cause was likely a fuel leak that resulted in an explosion. And here's the thing, this wasn't a stretch. PBM mariners were infamous for leaking fuel vapors. In fact, their nickname was flying gas tanks. Not exactly reassuring. And the incident wasn't without witnesses. A nearby oil tanker saw the explosion. Their captain radioed in, quote, 1950 hours, observed a burst of flames. Looked like an explosion. Flames shot 100 feet in the air and burned for 10 minutes. We're now passing through a slick of oil. We've stopped circling the area using searchlights to look for survivors. End quote. That matches exactly where the Mariner disappeared on radar, according to the USS Solomons, which had been tracking both planes. Honestly, this seems like a pretty clear-cut case. The Mariner was a volatile aircraft, and this wasn't its first in-flight explosion. The evidence lines up. A fiery explosion, a nearby oil slick, and no survivors. Tragic, yes, but not mysterious. Now, as for Flight 19, that's where the mystery has lingered for decades. But even there, the Navy wasn't content to shrug and walk away. They launched an official inquiry. And while they couldn't pinpoint an exact cause, their conclusion was blunt. The flight leader became so disoriented that it resulted in something akin to mental breakdown. And you know what? That makes sense. I speculated earlier that Taylor may have suffered from hypoxia, but there could have been other issues. The report suggests multiple contributing factors. First, Taylor didn't have a working clock in his cockpit. That might sound trivial, but when you're flying over ocean, tracking time is vital for estimating fuel and distance. Second, he reported both of his compasses were malfunctioning. That left him without basic orientation. Third, while Taylor was an experienced pilot, he was relatively new to the region. He didn't know the Bahamas well, and may have mistaken unfamiliar islands for ones he had known during his time based in the Florida Keys. And here's where it gets more personal, and possibly more troubling. There are few sources that claim Taylor was reluctant to fly that day. Reportedly, he had asked to be excused from a mission. Some even say he'd been drinking heavily the night before due to a breakup or other personal stress. While I couldn't find solid evidence backing this up, the story crops up enough to raise an eyebrow. Classic case, a skilled professional having an off day under the worst possible circumstances. Now let's talk about the crash itself. So according to history.navy.mil, quote, the most probable outcome is that the planes attempted an emergency ditching north of the Bahamas near the Florida coast. A sudden, fast-moving weather system likely hit them as they ran out of fuel. Ditching a TBM Avenger in high seas, especially at night, is extremely dangerous. The aircraft probably broke up on impact, and even if any crew survived, they wouldn't have lasted long in the cold December water. So there you go. The Navy's official version. No wormholes, no alien abductions, just a series of very human, very tragic mistakes, compounded by weather, equipment failure, and poor luck. But if you're here for the conspiracy theories, don't worry. We're just getting started. But if you came here hoping for a conspiracy, secret portals, and possibly an alien or two, we're heading straight into that territory now. So Flight 19 disappeared inside what's become one of the most infamous patches of ocean on Earth, the Bermuda Triangle. If you're watching this, there's a good chance you already know what that is. But just in case, the Bermuda Triangle refers to the stretch of Atlantic Ocean bordered by Miami, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico. For decades, it's been associated with strange vanishing acts, ships and planes allegedly disappearing without a trace. The popular claim, over 50 ships and 20 aircraft have been lost in that area mysteriously. And yeah, it sounds spooky, especially when you hear it as a kid. I remember growing up thinking there was literally some kind of monster living there, like a massive tentacled sea beast lurking under the waves, reaching up and snatching airplanes from the sky. Maybe that idea came from some cartoon or movie, but in my head, the Bermuda Triangle was a no-fly zone, not because of storms, but because of some Kraken-level creature plucking planes out of the air like grapes off a vine. Of course, the reality is a lot less thrilling. The Bermuda Triangle isn't magical or cursed. There's no compelling evidence that more disappearances happen there than in any other heavily trafficked part of the ocean. In fact, the US government doesn't even recognize it as a real geographic location. Still, theories persist, and one of the more out there ideas is this: wormholes. Yep, let's go all in. According to some believers, the Bermuda Triangle is home to rips in the space-time continuum. That's right, actual wormholes, interdimensional portals, gateways to alternate realities. These theories suggest that ships and planes don't crash. They just slip through into somewhere else. Supporters often point to Taylor's mysterious radio message as proof of something strange. You remember the one? Quote, "I'm over the land, but it's broken. I think I'm in the Keys, but I'm not sure how far down." To the wormhole crowd, this is damning. They say the only way he could have gotten that far off course or seen something so unfamiliar is if he passed through a time portal. Look, I get it. It sounds fun, but let's be honest. This guy forgot a watch. His compass was broken. He was flying over an area he barely knew. Do we really need wormholes to explain that he mistook a chain of islands? Also worth noting, the Bahama Islands and the Florida Keys, they look incredibly similar from the air, especially if you're stressed, disoriented, and panicking. Throw in some adrenaline, a bit of fear, and you got a recipe for confusion. No time travel required. And as far as his everything looks wrong quote, the one where the sea appeared to be a strange color, he allegedly said they couldn't see land, the whole thing is probably bunk. According to a BBC documentary from 1976, that quote never existed. The producers spoke to the radio tower officers who were on duty that day, and both firmly stated that no such message was ever transmitted. So where did it come from? The most likely answer, a book. Someone trying to sell copies added a dramatic detail. It caught on, and now it's floating around in documentaries and Reddit threads like it's gospel. It always goes like this, right? Someone says, there was a strange final message. Someone else goes, wait, what message? Oh, the one I found in this self-published paperback? Cool, very convincing, which is a problem for all Bermuda Triangle theories, because a lot of them rest on made-up evidence like that. And if your mystery needs fiction to function, maybe it's not much of a mystery at all. So if Flight 19 didn't get sucked into a wormhole or crossed into an alternate dimension, what else is left? Well, there's always the fallback explanation when people don't like the official one, a government cover-up. Now look, I understand the instinct. People that tend to be suspicious of government narratives, often with good reason. But in this case, I have to ask, why would the Navy want to cover up this incident? What would they gain from hiding the disappearance of 5 planes and 14 men? Still, that hasn't stopped a bunch of independent investigators from diving into the case, hoping to uncover something the government doesn't want us to know. And you know what? Some of what they found is actually kind of interesting. So let's go back to 1963. A Florida lawyer named Graham Stickleather was out hunting in the Everglades when he stumbled upon something strange: a downed military aircraft. Navy markings and all. Inside, 2 bodies. He immediately contacted the authorities, and the military swooped in, recovered the wreckage, and took the remains. According to the lawyer, someone from the Navy casually mentioned that the crash might be connected to Flight 19. Naturally, he tried to follow up. He wanted to know who those 2 bodies were, whether they were part of the missing flight, but every attempt to get more info hit a brick wall. The Navy wouldn't give him anything. Would a Navy official really say something like, yeah, this might be one of the Flight 19 planes? That feels unlikely. In reality, the military tends to play things very close to the vest. They don't just casually toss out top secret speculation to random civilians, especially not about something that's been fueling conspiracy theories for decades. Anyway, this lawyer didn't stop. Frustrated by the lack of answers, he contacted a friend at the Pentagon. According to him, that friend basically told him, you won't get anything else, drop it. Okay, again, sounds cool, sounds very movie, like a shady informant giving you a cryptic warning in a parking garage. But in the real world, that kind of language only encourages people to dig deeper. If you really wanted someone to back off, you'd probably just give them a boring explanation. Tell them it was a 1950s training accident. Show them some unrelated tail numbers. Done. But nope, he pushed further. Eventually, he teamed up with another researcher named Tom Marr. He had a different theory. He believed that not all the planes flew out to the sea. Some might have turned back and crashed into the Florida swamps. Now, that would explain why wreckage could be found on land instead of the bottom of the ocean. Their theory hinges on the idea that a few of the pilots, maybe those with marine backgrounds, decided to abandon Taylor's leadership, fly back on their own. One of those planes, they believe, is the one that Steichleather found. Apologies for butchering his name. In 2013, Marr even filed a Freedom of Information Act request to try and get the names of the two bodies found in that wrecked plane. The Navy refused. The names had been redacted from all records. They believed that the plane was flown by Captain Edward Powers, Sergeant Al Thompson as gunner, and Sergeant George Panessa on the radio. Here's where it gets even wilder. Only two bodies were found, so where's the third crewman? Theory that Panessa survived. Not only did he live through the crash, but for reasons unknown, he vanished, chose to disappear, went into hiding. According to this theory, one of the missing Flight 19 crew members walked away from the wreck and deliberately vanished from history. Sounds a bit far-fetched, right? But wait, there's a twist. While digging through old files at the Naval Air Station Fort Lauderdale Museum, Marr found a copy of a telegram. It was sent to Panessa's family just a few days after the disappearance. The message read, quote, "I am very much alive. Signed, Georgie." Now, to be clear, the name Georgie was Panessa's nickname. The family recognized it immediately, and they believed it was really from him. Could it have been a hoax? Absolutely. Most likely, it was either someone trying to give false hope or a cruel prank. But the family, they're convinced it was real. One staff member at the museum was interviewed and said, quote, "Most people think it's a hoax, but I'm not so sure. Only close family knew him as Georgie." But come on, his name was Georgie. Isn't exactly an unusual nickname. Anyone who knew his name could have taken a guess. And if he really had survived a top secret military cover-up, do you think he'd send a telegram from a Navy base? Feels like a pretty bad way to stay off the radar. Even if he was in shock or confused, it's still a risky move. And again, we're relying on very shaky documentation for any of this. Now here's where the theories really come unglued. Some conspiracy-minded folks on the internet have taken it a step further. They claim Flight 19 wasn't just lost, it was taken. Aliens. Yes, really. E.T. took him. There's a detailed theory online that says the Navy had a secret agreement with extraterrestrials. In exchange for advanced technology, they handed over the planes and their crews. According to these enthusiasts, Taylor's final broadcast was, quote, "I know where I am now. Don't try and come after me." No one has ever verified that he said this, of course. It's just another mysterious quote with no paper trail. And as for the idea of aliens trading technology with Earth's military, let me ask you this. If aliens have the capability to travel across galaxies, to cross vast cosmic distances at unimaginable speed, what exactly do they need from us? iPhones? Androids? So let's take a step back and ask the big question. What really happened to Flight 19? Was it an unfortunate but explainable tragedy caused by human error, bad luck, and technical failures? Or was it something stranger? You got two main options here. Option 1, the official version. Capable but disoriented flight leader loses his bearings, bad weather rolls in, the squadron runs out of fuel and ditches in the Atlantic. No magical portals, no sinister cover-ups, just a tragic accident. Option 2, conspiracy route. Bermuda Triangle opens up and swallows 5 planes whole. Or maybe aliens strike a backroom deal with the Navy and beam the pilots up in exchange for what? Blueprints for a microwave? Look, I get it. We love a good mystery. A story without clear answers lets our imagination fill in the blanks. But here's something that might surprise you. Despite all the headlines, despite all the unsolved labels slapped on documentaries and clickbait articles, The Bermuda Triangle isn't particularly mysterious. In fact, according to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, there's no statistical evidence that the Bermuda Triangle sees more disappearances than any other busy section of ocean. They said, quote, "There is no evidence that mysterious disappearances occur with any greater frequency in the triangle than in any other large, well-traveled area of the ocean. Boaters and flyers continue to pass through the area every day without incident." And it makes sense. This part of the Atlantic is so massive, over 500,000 square miles. It also sees a lot of air and sea traffic. Ship and planes go missing sometimes, not because of sea monsters or ripples in space-time, but because accidents happen, storms happen, people make mistakes. And when wreckage sinks in deep ocean water, it's incredibly hard to find. That's not mystery, that's logistics. Now, as for the whole government cover-up angle, yes, the military is secretive. That's not proof of conspiracy. It's literally part of their job. Keeping information locked down, especially when it involves the loss of personnel and equipment. It's just standard procedure. And let's not forget, we don't actually have proof that the swamp crashed plane the lawyers found was connected to Flight 19. It might have been another adventure from another time. The Navy crashed a lot of aircraft in those years. Aviation in the 40s was frankly dangerous and record keeping, not exactly perfect. The telegram that said, "I'm very much alive, Georgie," it's probably a hoax, at best a cruel prank. At worst, a false hope that gave a grieving family a few confusing days. Because if you had just escaped a botched military mission that was supposedly being covered up, would your first move really to be to send a telegram signed with your nickname? Yeah, no. Look, I know the official story isn't flashy, doesn't make for thrilling late night YouTube spirals or Netflix specials, but sometimes the simplest explanation is the most accurate one. Taylor got lost, his instruments failed, the weather worsened, the flight ran out of fuel, they likely ditched in rough seas, no survivors. Tragic, but sadly very human. Of course, if you want to believe in wormholes and secret alien deals, I can't stop you. That's half the fun of stories like this. They invite wild theories. And hey, the comments section's always open for the what ifs, so go nuts, and I'll be reading them. But for me, I'm sticking with boring old reality. So thank you so much for watching or listening. If you enjoyed this episode, go ahead and hit the like button, or better yet, leave a review. It's one of the best ways to support what we do. And if you want to support the channel, you can buy us a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Larry M. Luis. Link is in the description, or you can scan the QR code that's right there. And with that, I will see you next time.